Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. Well, I'm going to give you a timeline about Chinese goods coming to America, when we might see some spot shortages on the shelves, and how people would react to that as they have in panic situations in the last couple of years. You can see there's going to buy everything and anything needlessly, aimlessly, senselessly. If it continues, and it doesn't look like this is going to end anytime soon. So I'll give you some numbers and figures here. Thank you so much for allowing me to do the research. I'm truly thankful, grateful that I can put this out, help all of us here, friends, families, and navigate through this trying times. And we've just seen the uptick of this. Absolutely turned into, it was before and now it's truly in play. And we see the world around us falling through the pudding, for a better term. So before I even start with China, there's been a few of you asking about these geoengineering programs in the EU, specifically England, but the wider EU has been doing it for a while as well. Now they're coming publicly to say that we're going to block the sun. That's just because they know we're coming into a cooling phase. I talked to several people who grow and are farmers in different regions, and they're like, it's cooler than normal right now. So they can ride on top of this natural cycle. And they can claim victory for it. All they have to do is spray a few lines, go, look, everybody, look. And then the temperatures don't get as high as forecast. We don't go into record temperatures this year. And they'll say, we did that. We did that. Now you have to pay us every year. But the joke's on us, I guess. Because we'll force them to use solar power and then we'll block the sun. Yeah, we've been stuck into this loop here of being forced on this green agenda to non-efficient power supplies, and then they're going to reduce the efficiency of that. Everybody in England should get a rebate or fully reimbursed for their solar panels if the government is going to block the very source that powers the solar panels. That makes no sense. And that's what's making people so angry is, hey, how do you unilaterally as an individual nation go ahead and block the sun for the rest of the planet? So this is the first test. There's so many tests involved in this, not just about spraying in the sky and taking advantage of it. It's now about single nations being able to do something that will affect the entire planet as a test case itself. Because if there's not enough pushback from other countries, governments, leaders, individuals, citizens, then the next set of countries will just be like, well, we're going to do our own thing, and it doesn't matter if the rest of the world, whatever the repercussions are. So this is a very important case right here coming up in terms of stopping it and sending the message that this is not going to work. Now, I'm wondering also if they're doing this to allow people to push back, to see if there will be any pushback. But we have more pressing things immediately right here. So the talk is America's so big and bad that we can make China do anything. We can bring them to their knees to a point, yes. But as we look at the swing from the year 2000 above to 2024 below, you see a giant shift in terms of, well, production and where that production goes to and trading partners of. So I'm going to wind you back in time just about 3 weeks ago. And these are the ocean bookings that would have made it to the States right about now, into Long Beach or Los Angeles, Seattle, somewhere along here. But you can see the arrows there are the percentages of goods not coming to America. U.S. imports from China, 64% down. Exports to China, 36% down. They're doing, we're not going to buy any of your beef. We're not going to buy any of your soybeans. Haha. Main takeaway is a lot of things are going to be cut off. And that'll cause shortages, spot shortages. That was from the beginning of April. So that was what should have arrived. And now we start to look at what's happening right around the time that these bookings should have made reservations for slots to get unloaded. They're not. Many truckers don't realize the container volumes collapsed quickly. Starting in May, port freight out of California and pretty much the West Coast will almost be eliminated. I got some things about Seattle port for you here. And then Treasury Secretary Bessent, this is the bottom there, of Watcher Guru, says a full trade deal with China may take 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years? That statement alone makes it seem as if this is permanent, it's planned, and it's all part of the plan. And this saber rattling, agitation is all baked into the transition from one system into another with excuses every single step of the way. This should have been hammered out in weeks had they really wanted to. It's 2 to 3 years, or that means all of the goods that we used to rely on coming from China are pretty much going to cease. If that much container volume is down after 3 weeks, and they're saying 2 to 3 years, then we're coming to a complete standstill in terms of consumables which were once easy to obtain. Now, the thing I don't like about it either is, this whole landfill economy that we've gotten used to, where you buy something, you use it for a couple of years, and you buy another one and throw it away because it's so cheap that that cost analysis. You buy 5 of those, equal to one of the old ones, okay. But if it breaks and there's no replacement, then what? Because that's how most American households are operating, that something is going to break in the near future, and you're already ready to replace it. Gamut here. But if you can collapse the economy, you can get everybody onto a digital currency, a stablecoin standard, when you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I'm looking at it as all one giant stage play, because this time was earmarked with the magnetic field changes on our planet. The yields are just dismal this year. That at that rollover point of people couldn't buy food, they were going to riot anyway. So the wealth transference had to occur, the track and trace needed to occur, and everything had to be moving in real time with the crop losses, all these excuses to transition systems during the time of chaos. And we are here right now. So what I'm saying, nothing organic is happening. This all seems as if it's planned. Now, Hong Kong is no longer sending packages to the U.S. So anything mailed out of that embarkation point ceases, because Hong Kong doesn't want to collect the tariffs. So there's we're not going to mail it. But a lot of inter-Asia mail popped up there first, and then knew it was going to get on a trans-hub going to America on the fast track. So now it's going to rewind. If you're going to try to send letters or packages to and from Asia, it's going to slow down considerably, because this point right here, not being utilized any longer by other Asian nations, the whole transport hub is being thrown into disarray. Now, this one comes off the 3 nations' largest retailers, Walmart, Target, Home Depot. They were warning also with Besant and talks with Trump that the disruptions in supply chains will equal empty shelves. And another sub-discussion on it was, what about security in the stores at that point? So big box stores are we're going to run out pretty quick. It's going to be noticeable, and that 2 weeks is now. So in the first week of May, second week of May, you are absolutely going to see, if it goes short on something, those will be the first things that disappear. So that means that the disappearance will be nearly instantaneous on a range of products, an array of products. Now, once those products disappear, there's not going to be any more of those. Those were the first to disappear, because those were the first most wanted, sought-after items that were continually replenished from China. Once those go off the shelves and we don't get it, it was a China thing. What else comes from different nations? The coffee, you can start to see every agricultural good getting really expensive too. So even like Costco, everything's just getting ridiculous expensive in there. So we got the ridiculous expensive food on top of non-available items, on top of our dollar devaluing, and you can just see where this goes. You can just see where it goes. So stock up now if you have something that comes from China, because here the World Trade Organization expects U.S. inbound cargo from China to drop 77% by the end of the year. That's staggering. 77? So here's the value of the dollar this year. We've dropped 8.2%. And if you look at the U.S. dollar index, before it was around 120, now it's scraping around 98-ish. We've seen some drops over the last couple of years, but this year it seems to be a little more precipitous, meaning your dollar doesn't buy as much. So even if you can get it, you're going to have to pay 10% more not because the price is up, because your dollar's worth less. And then made in China, sold on Amazon. So if you think you're going to jump like you did in COVID and hop into the Amazon route and that'll save me and carry out and think, different this time. Because 71% of all things sold on Amazon come from China. And that has been reeled back, nothing moving. And those individual orders canceled. You get a million billion news articles about that. Was the very first thing that was affected, is the de minimis, anything under $800 that used to come in through those kind of orders, gone. So Amazon themselves is not facilitating orders from China like that used to be in that supply chain. Amazon is even canceling orders on a full cargo container coming in. So everywhere you look, if Amazon's canceling orders, and that was the supply chain during COVID to get us through, now that supply chain's being cut. What's the workaround? Well, I think there's a lot of stuff in our closets and our attics around the United States that could be traded and bartered for a minute, and I think that really will get us through the first year. You're probably going to watch a lot more like weekend markets pop up where people come in to trade what they have or maybe even sell it, use cash. But I think there's going to be a lot of bartering going on. So maybe that's a skill you need to learn how to do is like, okay, how do I even value this in terms of somebody else's want or need with that? And what am I willing to trade for it? Food's one thing, a hardware good, a hammer, a nail, a screw, a set, a socket set, a bunch of O-rings, the exact same voltage regulator that I need to keep my mower going. What am I going to trade for that? Let's say your equipment breaks, spark plugs, this sort of thing. What would you do to get your equipment running again? Like, what's that worth to you to keep your machines up and running? Do you think you're going to let your yard go an entire full summer without trimming it or mowing it once? First, you're going to get a lot of insects in there, a lot of them biting, depends on which area of the country you live in. But trying to fight through that, you're going back into wild field style at that point. If your mower breaks, unless you got a hand scythe, and I can't see too many people with hand scythes in America going through their front yard after it gets 3 feet tall, scything that down. We rely on machines. So if those break or not functional, then what? Question is, what would you trade for it? Oh, you can't, my bad. This is just the aircraft supplier. They were declaring force majeure already, saying that we can't get you the parts because we can't get the parts ourselves from another place. So we can't deliver, so the contract, null and void, whatever, my bad, act of God, force majeure. Halting some shipments if they're impacted by tariffs, which at least 80% so far, as I've heard, of companies are affected by this so far. Dealing with something coming out of China, a part, a partner, a manufacturing process, whatever, outbound to China. It's not just imports into China. What about all the farmers that are sending goods over there? Now, here's what I was talking about earlier. Like Five Below has asked vendors to turn away products waiting for shipment from China. They're not even getting in the container and they're stopping them. And Maersk, one of the largest shippers on the planet, sent a letter to suppliers on behalf of discount retail chains. They're electing to suspend all, that should be capital letters, all cargo shipments to the U.S. from China. Yeah, this is what's happening right now. So it's not just that the vendor says, I don't want to pay the tariff. Now we're even rolling it back to the docks, and I'm going to bring you some more info on that, what's happening in China, one step back. But we're at the point now where even the companies that are our companies in America are saying, don't even load the ships in China to bring stuff over. Again, for me, it seems very purposeful and planned to do such a thing. Like these shortages in the beginning. Now, the reason I'm bringing you the video, I wanted to walk through this mind experiment with you because go back again in COVID, everybody bought up all the toilet paper. All right, they got into this like fever of I gotta buy it. And then what was it? Just it had to have been like a month ago or something. There was another whole like scare. I gotta go ahead and buy it, and people were running out to buy the same thing. It's going to be like this, but it's going to be more of a generalized. The messaging will be everything from China is drying up. If you need to get it, go get it right now, which will send everybody out, and they're going to buy 2 or 3, which will make the shortages even so much faster. That's going to be the messaging. And then at that point, politically, it's going to get a little sticky, shall we say, because if people can't get what they need, like light bulbs, what are you going to do if you can't get a light bulb in your house, right? These kind of things are going to get politically sticky. I don't even have a light bulb. I don't even have light in my house, and I live in 2025 in America, and I can't turn on a light in my house. That point, we have definitely reversed the course back somewhere different where we don't want to be. But that's what it's going to come to. And, you hear the mower out in the front there. What about your farm equipment? The farmers themselves with much larger machinery than I have. I mean, that's just a 0.425 rolling through out there to mow around the orchard and thing. Voltage regulator, that's my number one thing that keeps breaking again and again. I know I've got to trace down the circuitry and there's probably something that's shortening it out. I get it. But in terms, I bought a 5-pack of those. So to replace 2 of them so far in the last year, I'm like, okay, I still got 3 more. Now I'm thinking I need to order 15 of those, because if they're going to break and I can't find the voltage drain problem or whatnot, then that's going to keep shorting and breaking, and I'm going to have to replace it twice a year maybe. That's a super simple thing, a mower, so I can at least keep the orchard clean enough to get out there to maintain it. Somebody who's on 500 acres. Like a lot of these small farms in Tennessee, they're not the big agribusiness. They don't have that full supply chain dedicated just for them. Like, think of like Sargenta, or that whole flow into Archer Daniels, or the whole flow into John Deere. Like, they got their own supply chains with their own manufacturing. They can absorb the tariff. They can get it sent. It's my container, our company. We're paying for it. It's gone. But a lot of little farmers, smaller farmers, 400 acres, 200 acres, 500 acres, that fill in that gaps from the large, they're just not going to have repair parts. All right, so now then what happens? Then we start to get into these, it wasn't the food shortages, really. The magnetic field knocked out a huge amount of yield this year. I hope you got the report on what I did, at least for the rice shortages. And it's strange. Even after the report I did giving you the prices, I'm going to come up with the wheat and the barley next, along with the oats, because those are a little bit shorter on the oats and the barley. I could squeeze those into one. So the rice, you saw that up in northern or northwestern India and northeastern Pakistan, that Punjab area, that's a major producer for rice for both India and for Pakistan. Well, that area is going into the war, so that's going to get cut off right now. And then Myanmar had that giant earthquake since I'd done the analysis on it, so rice production is going to be down. So those numbers that were at 5 to 7% rice production losses on the whole year is actually going to probably go up to 6 to 8, another full percentage point up. This is happening across the globe to every single major grain crop. So now, if the governments won't have to explain that the grain crops are declining because of climate change, for example, and magnetic field shifts on our planet, declining magnetosphere, they can blame it all on the tariff wars here for a minute, and that'll get them through 2 declining growing seasons. This is where I'm going with it. It's purposeful. This time for the reset was here anyway. Now the last whatever magic starting gun that everybody got from whatever analysis they were doing, I think it's in play right now because, well, they got that last information that said it's a go right now. So now we're starting to see everything to cover up all the natural crop losses, and everything else, like I said, has an excuse behind it why it's working and why this, you can blame on everybody. And also those excuses are perfect because they're finger pointers, where it's not us that we did it. We didn't warn the people, hey, it's not our machines, our government that did it. Now it's every other bad government that won't kowtow to us or whatnot. And then the other governments can look and go, oh, look what the bad Americans did, and they can finger point too. All the while, the crop losses are mounting. And every excuse is in the book why the food price is going to get more expensive, why we need to shift financial and economic and payment systems, why your food's not going to be available with less choices. And it's going to start with the goods coming from China to get you ready for when the shortages come. You're just like, oh, it's just part of another shortage. It's been like shortages for months through the summer. We're not getting anything from China. And then the food shortages, well, it's just part of it. They're walking you down the slow drip into bending your mind, because if the food shortages came first on the shop shelves, you would freak first. They're going to get you ready with the China shortages first. Then they're going to dump the food shortages on you. Oh, you'll probably need a digital rationing card. Welcome to the track and trace. Did you get your little gold star on your ID card yet? Moving along here, essentially all shipments out of China for major retailers and manufacturers has ceased. Port of Los Angeles, almost nothing booked to come in. But there's an enormous amount of ships offshore. They just can't pay the tariffs. And even clear that backlog is going to take better part of 5 months, 4 or 5 months. Now here is a goodie from Seattle. Not a single international cargo ship is at the port of Seattle. And then the port of LA, main route entry from China, expecting to drop 45% lower. Now that's the first drop, and that shall continue down. So these are the numbers that are slowly trickling out, but I want you to look at the right chart. The change on year, so the blue is a positive. That's the amount of containers, cargo coming in, ships coming in. And then we see the first announcements of the tariff, and the shipments had dropped slightly. The ones that are expected by May 4th, that's that 45% drop they're talking about. But as we come into, May 20th, 25th, June 1st, that will be a full 70+% down. And then that's really when the shortages are going to hit. Because if we walk through the tariff announcements, it happened really fast. January comes in, 10%, 20%, 54%, 100, now it's up at like 245%. But you can see the gradual walk up in just a matter of every week. It's a different thing. Well, as you follow that line up is where the cargo stops on those particular days coming to America. So you can forecast it out. If you're going to subtract 30 days or subtract 45 days off of where that sits from the arrival time, then you start to get really May and June is when it hits. Even if everything smooths out, let's just say next week, and everything's back to normal, it's still going to take 8 weeks or 3 months at least to get these goods back to that sort of smooth in supply chain that ran on a bicycle chain like before. It's a good time to have extra supplies anyway. Now, would that put you in the group of a hoarder because I bought 3 instead of 1? Well, in times of change, those who see the changes and act on them are the ones who survive. I think it will be the very last minute type of thing for most people anyway. Deer in the headlights, 80% of the population anyway. So if you're receiving this information, I would protect you and your families first versus worrying about everybody else who never worried about it anyway until it was always an emergency at the last minute and they were clawing and crawling on everybody's backs to try to get their supply because they realized at the last minute they didn't have it. Those are not the people you want to work with anyway. If they're not that prepared and they can see this coming a mile away and they're still that not prepared, please. Go protect your families, get a couple, get extras, and the ones you know you're going to need. This is going to be a huge news story. You know how these media outlets behave, and they're going to smell blood in the water, and they're going to go for it. And that is going to cause the panic to get everybody else out to go buy. And then when they go buy, then the media can come back and go, look, the shortages are even bigger this week. And it's going to be a self-fulfilling, rotating problem, reaction, solution type of thing. They're going to push the stimulus into the populace. The populace is going to react one way. You already know how they're going to react. We've already seen it before. And they're going to go out and buy, and then this media will come back in again, and then just rinse and repeat the cycle. That's why those CEOs were talking secondary about security in the stores. So I continue. And thank you for staying around for this little bit longer one here. I wanted to try to get all the info out to you. So the world suppliers. You can see China's the number one supplier outbound to an enormous amount of countries now. So that whole switch there from the year 2000 to 2023, well earned. I mean, they did a great job bringing their country up, whether you believe in the politics or whatever. To turn that place to what it was into what it is, I mean, that's the largest transition of a civilization in human history. You got to give them credit where credit's due. Now here's an interesting one also that I try to dissect the information and look at it sort of objectively here and just like sky's blue. China's exports, all right, most of that is going to other places in the world. And I look and I say, okay, North American outbound exports, it's around 20% of their total export market. So I'm wondering why this is having a gigantic blowback in China. You think they would just shift and be like, okay, 20%, we can eat that and we can kind of reabsorb it and redistribute it and then, give deals and push it out to the rest of the world. This is where I disconnect here. Is this chart even right? You can't tell me this much discombobulation in terms of China closing factories and they need to do the most stimulus ever in the history of their country to try to get through this on a 20% difference. That's difficult. All right, so anyway, I'm surfing through a bunch of different Chinese videos here over the weekend. China Observer. This is the goods that are stacking up in the warehouses in China that have already been produced from the factories that didn't make it to the containers, nor will they ever make it to a container. If they do, it's going to be months or years down the road, and the viability of that product, whatever it is. Okay, so here's Tianjin Port, for example. Every square inch that could be stacked on a container is utilized already in the yard. And check that out. All those trucks out there are it's miles long, apparently, this line. These are trucks that had some sort of cargo container, steel belt, steel sheet, whatever. There's all different types of things getting exported out of there. Tianjin's a huge manufacturing area, heavy industry too. All those trucks, they're waiting to put a container to unload it to get it into the port onto a ship. So that backlog there, they're stuck too. They can't unload their containers off the trucks. And every single manufacturer is completely stacked in their own factories, backed up too. So you're only seeing a very small percentage of where the gridlock is occurring right now. And then the people who are manufacturing are already stuck. They can't sell. So this is interesting. A piece of clothing that I used to be able to sell for $100 in the U.S. now sells by the ton for a few cents per piece. No one's coming to buy. Yeah, the entire buyer market's gone. But see, that loops me right back into how is only 20% of their total export market causing this much chaos? And what has happened is these factories have stopped production because the orders are not coming. And I'm like, wait a minute. So every single factory in China is pretty much just producing for America? I can't really believe that. We're 20% of their total exports. So what's happening is these factories are not getting the orders, and they're told by the shipping container companies, we're not going to pack, don't even make it. So then you're coming back several channels deep here of, okay, the fabric supplier, the thread supplier, the box supplier, the packaging, the plastic sheet, plastic, put it in a shirt in there and fold it over, like those plastics manufacturers, like everybody down that chain is stopping as well. And for example, since they're stopping, there's no more orders coming in, the banks are calling in the loans immediately, and they're going in and seizing the equipment and auctioning it off in literally real time within 3 days. Because they're unable to pay back on their loans. They're unable to pay the employees. There's riots out in front of the factory. Well, the police are going nuts right now because people are blocking it off going, we know you're going in there to take the machinery to bring it out to auction it. So the employees are blocking it off going, you're not going to leave with the machinery, because if you leave with the machinery, that's the only way you ever have to get paid. I don't care if I get 2 cents on the dollar. You sell that machinery and we get paid. If you take it, we get absolutely zero. And the amount of civil unrest in China it's growing by the day. It's really a national emergency in there. And as you see, these factories are again and again stopping production. And I was thinking, well, why don't you just redivert it to the Middle East? Why don't you just redivert it over to Europe? Can you not redivert down to South America? So this is where some of these things just don't make sense anymore. Is this all a fiction that we saw of the growth of economies around the world? Because you can't tell me that China is this damaged with a 20% reduction in orders. It doesn't make sense. So China's response now is they're trying to destigmatize cheap Chinese junk. And they want to bring it in internationally as we're the top tier manufacturer, top quality. So they've gone on a PR blitz telling you, before this was a thing, you could only as a manufacturer directly sell to a company usually, and you'd have to do all the freight forwarding. And so these companies are set up to do that, right? So you wouldn't order like David calling this company and going, I need 5 of these shirts. Can you send them? Well, that's what the de minimis package whole thing got into, was they started to do this, but now these last 2 weeks, they had a barrage of army of English speakers come in and reformat every website with an English interface in it so you can buy direct from every Chinese factory now. 100% of them are doing this. Never done it before. But now they're trying to go direct to consumer again, and if you're willing to pay the tariff and you still get it, you get your supplies. All right, so everybody's getting forced into paying higher prices. So last thing I want to say is China's debt to GDP, last line there, 33. There we go. That's that number I was looking for, 33. So is a signal that something is turning over with the Chinese debt. And sure enough, on cue, look at that. They have put in and are putting in the largest stimulus package ever recorded by China, ever. The only other country that had pumped more stimulus into the global economy in a single year or two, the United States. If China, see, this is the back way workaround with this. Everybody needs more liquidity, and the world's markets are collapsing and locking up right now. America can't do it because our debt's so huge and gigundous, and we need to refinance $9 trillion worth of our debt that's rolling over this year in 2025 alone. We can't print more. So they're going to rely on the world's second largest economy, or actually could be the first largest now. We're in that tight race there between first, second. China's going to do what we did during COVID. Print an infinite amount of yuan or money. And they're doing it on a gold-backed system as well. So they're hoovering in as much gold as possible and silver through the world to put as a base, and then they can print off of that. At least there's something behind it, right? We have entered an entirely new planet here. And thank you for staying along this. I know it's a little bit longer video, but I really Think this is so important for us moving forward. This is definitely one of the largest parts of the reset happening right now. You can still get your orders from China. You're going to have to order direct from them, and I don't know how the payment systems are going to work. No idea. But you will be able to get your goods direct from China as a person now, not a company. That was always the firewall. You had to deal with a company, minimum order quantity, all these types of things. Now China is saying anybody welcome to buy anything, just like you would off of Amazon. Contact these factories direct, and as long as you're willing to pay the tariff, we will send it to you. So if you're willing to pay an extra, 2 times the price to get something you can't get, is it worth it for you to pay 2.5 times the price to get something that you can't get? It's not available. I don't care if you have 100 times the amount of money. You can't get it because it's not there to sell. See, when these store shelves start going off the hook empty, at that point, people are going to, take that into consideration and go, well, this thing is not available. It's never going to be available again through current, traditional means. Perhaps I will spend, 3 times on it to go get it direct from China and then mail it in. You're paying the duty on it. You might as well get 20 of them and sell them to your friends. So this is what China's trying to do, is get the American people themselves to go start buying direct from China. You pay the tariff, and you obviously are going to bring in more than you need. So they're trying to do this back-routed, direct-to-consumer model, cutting out all the corporations. And I wonder how long that would take before they'd finally get a container load to put it on a ship to get it over here. But then you need how many containers to fill the ship to make it worthwhile. So there's multiple parts of this puzzle in this Rubik's Cube here. Like minimum orders, how much was going to go into a container, how many containers does it take? When you get it, what about the freight forwarding on the other side? Are there even going to be truckers working to bring the stuff in? What kind of road banditry and stuff's going to be happening? There's a lot of working parts here. The food's next. The food is next. This year is definitely the rollover year, and you're going to notice it, and they're trying to mask it. I really believe all these things happening in the world are to cover up the crop losses. That's the one that's going to upset the apple cart. As long as you can push that down the road and not really tell people about it as much, that is the biggie. Cover up the crop losses. So every excuse is out here to do so, to explain the disruptions, why you're paying more for everything. And it's really just a wealth transference. It really is. So I wish you the best. Take an inventory of what you might need that's out on the shelves right now that you might want to get 2 or 3 of. Can't hurt anyway. Prices are just going to continue to go up. And take a look at your tool inventory, what you might need for that. Tools are going to be an important one because you can grow your own food. Make sure you take a look at that. Repair, things that you can use to repair tools. You're going to have to bump that up too in your spot. You're going to have to get a little more self-sufficient in just repairing things. So, a good socket kit, wrenches, vice grips, all of the screwdrivers, all that good stuff we always had as kids. Our dads always had that stuff around. I don't care where you went, any friend you went. Every garage, anybody in a garage always had, their dads always had stuff, toolboxes. That kind of rudimentary stuff needs to be in your garage too. So I wish you the best, and maybe if you have something that uses tires, perhaps even your car if you want to change the tires. But I'm talking more anything like those mowers out there, tires. If you have a break or a flat or something in the tire, you could replace your tire. That's going to be a big one. Your entire machine will go down if you don't have a tire. Been there, done that. And, tires on a car, if you have the extra money, it might be a good idea because a lot of that stuff's manufactured in China as well, our tires. It's such a national security issue to let that much be manufactured in a different country like that. I mean, the tires, that should be a home manufactured industry. That is national security in itself. Our military equipment, whatever it is, a lot of it uses tires. Our cars use tires. Our trucks use tires. If there's no tires, our entire system implodes here because we set ourselves up on road transport. Without tires, our entire system grinds to a halt. It's up to you now, and me too. I'm preaching to the choir here. So anyway, see you next time. Appreciate your support. Come back I want to talk about the global dimming idiocy as well. But again, that's just to cover up the natural cooling that was going to be here anyway, arriving right now. So you see how there's so many levels of this, but people eat it up. Oh yeah, they dim the sun, it cooled the planet. Awesome. Hey, I want to, we got to get more global taxes for that. And you can just see how it rolls. Bye for now.